Hi, Chris. It's Wednesday. I wanted to tell you about the trip that I took a couple weeks ago down to the DC area. So I met my friend Fabian when I studied abroad in Vienna. He's from Switzerland and was working on a master's in history where he specialized in one of the German World War II jet aircraft, which I think is the HE 163. It's the single engine called the Volksjäger. So I've been bugging him for a little while to come visit the States, and he's a big aerospace fan just like me, so we decided that we'd try to meet up in DC so I could take him to the National Air and Space Museum. So he brought his childhood friend Alex, who's also from Switzerland, and they spent the first day in New York City to acclimate to the time zone. Then they rented a car, which they got the most American car that they could think of, a Ford Expedition. So they drove down to Atlantic City, spent a couple days there, and then on their last day in Atlantic City, I took the train from New York down to Washington, and I spent that afternoon. I visited the the American History Museum. Walked all around that. That was a lot of fun. They're redoing quite a bit of it, so they had maybe a third of the museum closed, but it was still pretty fun. Then that evening, I grabbed dinner with your friend Patrick, and then the next morning, Fabian and Alex were driving down from Atlantic City to DC. So I had the morning open. I went and visited the Holocaust Museum in DC, and um, then I met up with Fabian and Alex. That afternoon, we visited the Arlington National Cemetery. We saw the changing of the guard, and then we grabbed dinner in Arlington, and then headed out to our hotel, which was in Annapolis, which ended up being okay. It was about halfway between DC and Baltimore, so visiting both sites was rather easy. The day after that, we decided to drive to the end of one of the DC subway stops, which I think was New Carlton, and we went to the National Mall. We spent pretty much the entire day at the National Air and Space Museum, and then when we were done with that, we walked a little bit along the mall. We walked towards the Capitol a couple blocks, and then turned around and headed towards the National or the Washington Monument, and then headed up towards the White House. I was planning on showing them the south side first, but it turns out they had the ellipse and the whole south side of the White House closed for some sort of event. So we got most way there, and then a security guard came running up to us and told us to leave. So I got to show them the north side, which pretty cool. Um, then after that, we went back to the hotel because we were all pretty pooped. The next day, we drove over to the Udvar-Hazy Center, and it turns out we picked a great day for visiting that because they had some sort of women in space expo going on. So they had a whole lot of events for Girl Scouts and stuff like that. But one of the people presenting, they sent someone from the Cosmosphere, and it turns out he was an SR-71 pilot, and he brought along one of the pressure suits with him. So I got to speak with him for a few minutes and learn a little bit more about the suits and a little bit more about the SR-71 operating procedure. That was a lot of fun. Got to see Space Shuttle Discovery there. I'd seen Enterprise in two locations, the Intrepid and at Udvar-Hazy, but it was really cool to actually see a space shuttle close up. Then that evening, we drove into DC and saw a Washington Wizards game, which was a lot of fun. It was a very good game, very close the whole game, and the Wizards ended up winning it with about a minute left in the game, so it was quite exciting. Um, then the next day, we went into Baltimore. We saw the B&O Museum, and then we thought we'd head into downtown Baltimore for grabbing some lunch, and then the original plan was to go to Fort McHenry afterwards, but we didn't have enough time to see Fort McHenry. But when we were headed to downtown Baltimore to grab lunch, we noticed that a whole lot of streets were closed, and there was a bit of heavy traffic. So after finally finding a parking spot, we were walking along, and we figured out that they're having the St. Patrick's Day parade. So we grabbed a spot on the side of the street, and I got to show my Swiss friends what an American St. Patrick's Day looks like. So that was quite a happy accident. I took them to Five Guys there in Baltimore, and they were quite impressed with how good an American burger could be. So that's pretty much the gist of the trip. The three of us had a great time, and they are now safely back to Switzerland. So I hope you enjoyed the story. It was nice visiting your old stomping grounds of the DC Arlington area. I hope to hear in your video about what you've been up to lately. See ya!